Hey y'all, this is Dan with the Hemp Highway of Kentucky, bringing you another episode of Hemp Threads Season 2. And I got a really cool interview here today. I am with Erica Halverson, who is the founder and CEO of Tiny E-Paper. And this is an all hemp-based paper product line that she's developed. And Erica, nice to meet you. Tell us about what inspired you and where you're going with this.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. Anytime I get to talk about what I'm doing with my hemp mission, it just gives me goosebumps all over. So thank you. The more that we talk about this, the more that we're really going to show the capability of this plant and what it's capable of. So how this got started, I got my gateway, for lack of a better term, into the cannabis industry, working for one of the most premier vaporizer companies. I was working for PAX on the cannabis side. And at the time, they were still part of Juul, which is the nicotine vaporizer. Mm-hmm. So I was doing marketing for both the non-regulated cannabis side and for the very highly regulated nicotine side at the very same time. And it was quite a juxtaposition, let me tell you. So that's actually what got me started on this hemp paper train. Is I was looking at these little pods that are in this packaging that is surrounded by mounds and mounds of tree trash. And I was thinking to myself, this is a wellness product. This is a medicine to so many people. And we are selling it in the most irresponsible way possible. And how dare us as an industry not understand and follow what our true credence is as an industry. And we need to get more on the sustainability level as well. Like, why don't we be the leaders in that? So I got the idea for Tiny E-Paper. First of all, why in the heck are we still relying on a valuable resource like trees for paper when we don't have to? So that was number one, is proving that we don't need trees at all. I'm making my paper out of 100% stalks from the hemp plant and from the post-extraction waste from CBD extractors. And so I'm able to solve two big problems for the industry. One is the CBD extractors are literally creating tons and tons of waste a day. And they don't have a lot of options of what to do with it right now, other than trying to find some products you can do with it or burning it for fuel, which breaks my heart. So I can take that off their hands, make paper out of it, sell it back to them in the form of their packaging for their tincture, their vape pod or whatever it is. And that creates a self-sustaining business model. Then when I get the entire cannabis industry on a B2B level, all of their packaging, labeling, receipt rolls, all of that business paper, I get us to switch over and stop using trees. And now we get to be a model to everybody else about truly making sustainable and responsible business decisions.
I think that's really cool. And I think it's really smart in a lot of ways to first approach the cannabis and hemp industries and how they're doing patent and thinking beyond the packaging, but the rolls on the receipts and the paper they use in their offices. You know, I mean, it isn't just blank paper. There's forms that people get printed up, and it is a little bit of a premium product because of the economy of scale and your ability to get resources at this time, not just financial resources, but like, you know, your supply chain.
The actual hemp.
Right, the supply chain. So there is a premium to that. I think that's really, how is it going with people understanding that they're going to pay a premium for the product?
Yeah, so that is actually one of my biggest strategies of how do I get as many people as possible to switch over from hemp or from tree paper to hemp paper. The number one question is, how much is it going to cost? Yeah. So that was the first thing, that this is the first conversation that I have to have with investors. That is not, I mean, we have to talk about our ugly babies, right? We can't just talk about the beautiful butterflies. So I have to realistically price my paper at a price point that makes sense for people to switch over so that the paper retains its intrinsic value. and doesn't start degrading its value because it becomes too expensive and people don't think it's worth that. How I am modeling my pricing is very similar to how we are currently buying light bulbs. We still have a choice in a lot of the country between incandescent and LED light bulbs. And 90% of the time we are making the choice to go with LED, sometimes paying 70% more for that light bulb because we understand all the value that it has. It's better for the environment. It lasts longer. All that kind of good stuff is already baked into that price. I believe up to a certain level, I'm going to automatically be able to bake that price into the price for hemp paper because people will understand those reasons for it. And I won't have to justify it. And that's also why I'm starting with the cannabis industry. It's a way easier conversation to have when they already understand the difference between hemp and cannabis, A, and B, understand the value proposition that I can bring to any cannabis company that makes that switch. I just gave them an enhanced brand message, and I bring a value proposition with every company that makes that switch over. So I'm trying to hold my pricing within no more than 30% more than what the tree paper version of that product is. And that seems to be my threshold.
Okay, well, that's realistic. I mean, when I was in manufacturing, we were a contract manufacturer. When we did automotive quotes, the automotive people wanted every single cost component broken down in a quote. And I'm bringing this up to you because I know you've done marketing at major appliance companies, and you kind of understand some of these breakouts and why they're done. Because, you know, at some level, that fraction of a penny or whatever it is that's cost, you know, the more demanding the packaging is, the more important it is to make sure you capture that cost and understand its impact on the final landed price for manufacturers at a certain scale.
Yes, which is why I'm now in a capital raise to get the money that I need to buy the equipment so I can be my own processor. Nice. Every single time my paper touches another something to do something to it, whether it's processing it, whether it's turning it into paper, whether it's then turning it into a box or an envelope or a bag, every time somebody else touches that paper in that process, that adds cost. And so the more that I can whittle that away, and you're right, in my career, my career set me up for this moment very well. So I used to do marketing for companies like Samsung and LG on their appliance side. But marketing wasn't just coming up with the campaigns and the fancy words to call this. I was in charge of all of the ordering of all the parts with the factories all around the world to make sure we could make that washing machine at the right price and make sure that it had components and parts that made sense for it. And that was, wow. So this all is right in my wheelhouse. So you're right. I very much understand this process, which is why I'm now trying to create a self-sustaining ecosystem that goes further than the business model. And what I mean by that is I'm going to take the waste that I can use for paper making and use that. The waste that I cannot use for paper making, I'm working with an eco-recycling company. We're going to turn that into living soil. That living soil then goes back to my hemp farmers. That creates that self-sustaining ecosystem. So I'm utilizing waste in both ways that I can and cannot use. And then the last piece of that, just to kind of really boggle your mind here, I'm going to be able to offer carbon credits to other cannabis businesses. Nice. Because I'm going to go carbon negative. Nice. There's the only waste in my paper making process. It's called black liquor or black licorice. And I've got a guy I'm working with that is a biochemist that has figured out how to create an enzyme that eats all the nasty stuff of that black liquor and leaves me with recycled water I can put back in the paper making process.
Oh, sweet.
So that's why I have said from the start that Tiny E-Paper is about way more than just making paper. I am truly on a hemp mission and a hemp movement. And the very definition of creating a movement means I have to have other people helping me. So that's what I say. The more that I get to have these conversations, the more that it really, I think people's minds open up to really how much of an impact, both on a regional scale and on a global scale, this plant can have.
I'm gonna dunk back down into the straight world business background that both of us have a little bit. At one point, I got into reading a lot of the popular books, business books, and one of them, Good to Great. Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, the story about Bethlehem Steel versus I think it was Nucor, and
Hmm.
Nucor coming in with the idea of having these small micro mills and setting up closer to maybe the consumers of the steel, because they weren't necessarily converting iron ore, they were reprocessing recyclables. But
Right.
that model of having a smaller, more efficient mill located in a more logistically sound location, um, I think you see where I'm going with this. Is this kind of a model that you've looked at? Because logistics have historically killed the hemp industry. Travel, I got to
Yep.
haul my stock somewhere. Well, there's only a certain point you can haul it before you're losing money on those stocks you just bought, losing a lot of
Yep.
money.
Now think about the paper making process. I have to turn that stock into wet, heavy pulp. And
Right.
so now you got to transfer that around. So I've got to dehydrate it, turn it, palletize it, then rehydrate it on the other side. It's a whole messy thing. So yes, I think about this every day of my life. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to create these geographical silos so that I'm never having to be shipping things across. I'm always shipping up and down. And how I'm starting that is last week, I put out a press release that announced a new partnership that I have with a nation tribe. So I am now an honorary member of a 7-state sovereign tribal alliance. I have access to up to 1 million acres of their land throughout. They span from Oklahoma all the way to California. So what I'm talking to them about is that's going to be the first place where we start putting one of these little geographical hubs. They've got sovereign land that they are willing to partner with people that have their same missions. And I can go in, take a building that they already have on their location. I'll pay them rent, put my machines, processing machines, in that building on their sovereign land. They're right now putting together a farming package for their tribal members, where if they want in on this, start growing industrial hemp, and here's what it means to you. Now I've got farmers on that sovereign land. We just have to bustle that stuff over to the processing unit where I'm employing only Native Americans from that tribal alliance and giving them jobs, and then making the paper from there. And that's how I can prove that this plant can go into specific economies and completely support the economy. Because this is a crop for making commodities, for making clothing and paper and textiles and all the things that are commodities now. And it has way more value than you can ever give a tree. You can't go to a nation tribe or go to an organization and say, hey, do you want to get into the tree growing business? Have I got a plan for you? Because it's going to take 25 years to get that freaking tree to grow, to do anything. So
Right.
This is an automatic way where in 4 to 6 months, we can have a direct impact on economies, on the environment. We haven't even talked about soil remediation and bringing back old cotton farms and cotton lands that are barren now, because cotton is one of the worst things you can put in the earth. Well, guess what? You go plant hemp all over the place and you can bring that. Hemp adds oxygen and nitrogen back to the soil. Bring all of that soil back and start planting rotating crops on it again.
Right, and depending on how it's being grown, it isn't nearly as, cotton just soaks up water.
Yes, and the
Literally.
pesticides needed to keep the critters off of it. I mean, it's horribly nasty all the way around.
No, I like the idea of the economy of scale. I think sometimes we kind of get really excited about the end game, and we're gonna just like immediately replace these products tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And getting into that ring with that level of company, manufacturer, supplier, it's you've kind of targeted who you're going to market to initially, how you're going to grow it. So it's a plan that seems to be well thought out on all levels.
Thank you. And the other part of it too is I want to be a company that doesn't just talk about working with marginalized communities and talk about being sustainable. I'm just going to do it and show people
Right.
and let other people talk about it because we're doing it. And so that's one of the other reasons why I'm particularly excited about this partnership with the tribal nation is they're one of the most marginalized communities in the United States of America. So if I can start proving that I'm a supporter of those types of communities and organizations, then that's another total game changer for some of these environments.
So, well, when you were talking about your logistical chain, you were talking about pulping, dehydrating, transporting, rehydrating. I believe paper gets put in, or it used to get put in paper molds, or that's what they would
Depends
call
on what you're doing with them. Yeah. Some of them, like the milk carton crates, those get into paper molds.
Right. So tell me a little, you said you had a few things you wanted to show us. Let's see some of the stuff that you're doing, because I think that would be fascinating.
So one of the biggest things that changed my life during COVID, we all had to figure something out, right? I was sitting here on a lockdown and I realized that the types of questions people were asking me about, can you make this product out of hemp paper? Can you make this product out of hemp paper? I'm like, wait a second, guys, you're not understanding. If I can make the paper, I can make anything out of that paper you can make out of that paper. So it's not about, can you make this one box? It's about, can you make the paper that is the right thickness, the right grain style to make 1,000 boxes? And so I started putting up all my concept tests. I started reverse engineering all of these different paper products because I was locked down. I had these rolls of hemp paper in my dining room, which turned into my laboratory. And I'm like, you know what? I was talking about it and people weren't getting it. So now I'm going to show people. So I started putting together, and I started with cannabis. Here's your edible box. Same box that Wild uses for their edibles, but now it's 100% hemp. Here is your child-proof vape pod box. It's child-proof. You are not getting in this sucker. And there are no trees in this. It's 100% hemp. Here is your takeaway food to go box. You can put your sandwich, your salad, whatever you want. There's a little one. Here's your big one. Here's your Saran Wrap Box. All of these are the same stock weight, but I can make all of these different boxes. And then we get into bags. And how many different types of bags can you make? And then what I'm also showing is I can make.
Could you hold that one up to the camera a little bit more? That looks really very close to actual like brown paper bag.
It is.
I mean, I don't see like, I mean, the boxes, I can see all the grain and I can, that's like, wow, that's impressive.
And that's the thing is I can give you a choice. For the first time ever, you're going to be able to customize your paper. Tree paper comes in one size fits all. Do you want to see the grains? Do you want to not see the grains very much? Do you want to not see them at all?
How does it print, or does it?
It prints fabulously.
Oh, wow.
It prints great. Let me see. There's a couple things that I printed. Here is full color.
Wow, that looks really nice.
It should. And guess what, too? This is 60 GSM paper. Normal printer paper is between 70 and 90 GSM. So
What's
because
GSM
paper,
stand for?
It's the tensile strength of this paper and the stock weight. So how thin it is. This piece of paper is way thinner than this piece of paper.
Right.
And that is, GSM is the unit of measurement, like a PSI.
Okay.
Or a joule for volume, or those types of things.
Okay, so it's like the standard paper slide measurement.
So when I can make, because of the strength of how strong hemp is, when I can make the paper thinner, I can sell more pieces of paper that weigh less. So you can get more reams of paper in a ream of paper. Or when I make that box out of it, now your box weighs less, and I've just taken down your shipping charge.
That's what I was thinking of. I mean, people don't really understand when, getting into a different thing when everybody hears this hemp plastic thing and Mercedes doing hemp. they're not making the plastic out of hemp. They're replacing the glass with the hemp because it's
Yes.
lighter, and every pound they take out of the freaking car saves money to the consumer on gasoline. And it's the same thing
Absolutely.
you're doing. If you could send, you know, if your truckload or whatever pallet size of paper can be shipped at a reduced weight, it helps offset the cost of your raw material in your production.
The other thing that I've done is, as I was going through my product testings, and I'll show you an example. This beer holder, I gave away a beer. Somebody needed a beer and it was all I had. So there's not 6, there's only 5, but these are full things of beer that I'm holding with this. The original box that this beer holder was made out of was made out of corrugated paper. Corrugated paper is 3 pieces of paper that are glued together to make it stronger. This paper was made out of the same paper I'm making my business cards out of, and it is 1 pane of paper, 1 sheet.
Okay.
So that is the other thing that I'm able to do is when I started reverse engineering these boxes and these bags and things, I was finding that I was using less paper to make the same type of box because I was only using 1 ply of paper versus 3 of them put together. The Starbucks coffee sleeve, for example,
Right.
It's a corrugated sleeve that uses 3 pieces of paper. And I made one that only has 2 pieces of paper that I glued together. Hang on just a second. My dog is barking out there. Stella! She's always part of it.
When I think of the carry for the beer, I'm thinking of something like the glossy cardboard like that. Doesn't that have like a, well, it's got, if you got 3 layers, you got some sort of laminate or glue in there holding
There's
it.
a laminate in there, and I'm laminating sheets right now to make them thicker. But yeah, and the
But
other
there's
thing
also
too is
that high gloss has some sort of, isn't there like a clay or a ceramic or something like that in there? That gives
there
it
are all different types. Yeah, and that's the other side of what I'm also working on is my whole concept of making my paper is I don't use any chemicals. I don't use anything that I can't put in my body that goes into the paper, because guess what? It has to go into our waterways and our soils. And so that's not very good.
Nice.
So I'm also trying to make sure that I'm testing out with vegetable dyes, with non-chemical adhesives and things like that. So I'm looking to make every single part of whatever goes into this, whether it's a coating on it or laminate, whatever it is, it's also 100% natural and no chemicals and things like that.
Nice.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different things. The other thing that I was finding is on some of these pre-manufactured boxes, I was finding perforations that I had no clue why the perforation was there. Well, that's a whole step in the manufacturing process that you can take out and save millions of dollars with. There was certain folds on things, and I'm like, what does this fold have to do with anything? It doesn't have any purpose. It's just folding this piece of paper in to get it out of the way. Well, chop it off, and now you don't need that glue to keep that piece of paper folded in. Like there were just weird little manufacturing things I was finding out the more I was taking apart the tree paper products.
That's interesting because I know that, you know, and you've done it too, because you've been in manufacturing at a high level. Packaging engineering is like a specialty. So the idea that, you know, and sometimes that's why it's good to bring people in from outside of a specific discipline, because
Absolutely.
you get blinded to, like, I've always done it that way. I always pride my kids, like, you don't worry about anything, and it's like, it isn't that. I don't mind asking the stupid question because that starts the conversation. And when you're not the packaging engineer, you don't look at it and say, oh, that's always been there. You look at it and like, why the hell do I need it?
Yeah, you don't need it. You're paying to make that thing there. If you don't need it.
Everything, like you said earlier, everything costs money. Anytime it's touched, just moving it from one side of your desk to the other before you move the paper off your desk is like, and people don't think that way. And in real life or in your day-to-day life, you don't want to quantify monetarily everything you do. But when you're in business, you really got to start thinking like that, because you can lose a lot of money treading water.
Absolutely. And every step of that, every single piece of all of that before this gets into my customer's hands, every piece of it affects the final cost. And I always go back to that. I can't, again, the number one question, I cannot have this paper be too expensive. So that's why I really have to bring that manufacturing in-house. But the best news about that is it also gives me a whole nother ROI, another revenue driver.
Right.
I can now be one of the few processors in the United States once I complete this, because even in the next 3 to 5 years, there's only going to be probably 4 to 5 full operational processors for hemp in the United States. That's still not that many for all of the products we need. Because guess what? To turn the hemp stock into anything, it has to be processed. It has to. There's no way around it.
And then we circle back to that whole thing of logistics, because you can all, that's the thing that I think people have got to wrap their head around as we start rolling into wrapping up here, is that it has to be scaled up small, not just because there's no existing infrastructure, but that if you just decided to convert everything to hemp right now that's made out of other products, you'd probably end up seriously impacting the food chain with the amount of acreage you'd need to transfer into hemp and away from things like corn and soy and other things. So it's got to be done in a manageable and, as you said, a sustainable way.
Yep.
So, Erica,
absolutely.
thank you so much. Any final thoughts before we roll out here?
No, just again, just thank you for this opportunity. I hope that this conversation, even just a little bit, opens people's minds a little bit more to what truly this plant is capable of. It's magic. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
You're very welcome.